Okay, so the first prerequisite for creating a dashboard is that you should have a dashboard, right? So we create dashboards, we report, we convert our reports into worklets, and then we add our worklets onto those dashboards. So it's a very simple process. Let me quickly show that. Okay, there are just a few things. The first thing is who would have access to this dashboard, right? Now, just like everything else in Workday, this is controlled by domains. So the idea is I can add any domain here, and those people who have, or those security groups that have access to that domain will also have access to this dashboard, right? So I'm creating a dashboard called dashboard 1, right? So if my dashboard is, let's say, EMP dashboard, right? And I have added, let's say, worker data domain. Let's say worker data. Let's say worker data. It doesn't matter what I select. I'm just selecting something which is relevant. Uh, let's say I select this dashboard, right? And maybe I'm also selecting one more dashboard, which could be, let's say, custom dashboard, custom domain. Sorry, I'm selecting one more domain, which is, let's say, custom domain, right? And let's assume I'm selecting this domain. So the idea is there are two domains selected on this dashboard. Let's say domain 1 and then domain 2. So any security group which has access to this domain would also have access to this dashboard, right? Because domain is what controls access to different secured items, right? So now if I go ahead and look into this domain and the corresponding domain security policy, right? So if I go into this policy, right? So all these security groups who have access to this particular domain would also have access to this dashboard, because the access to this dashboard is basically controlled through these two domains, right? So most of the times what we do is we make use of these custom domains. Okay, and then I can give some short description for the dashboard if I want to. I can select any of the dashboard icons. So this is what shows up, right? So I'm selecting this, right? I can select any dashboard icon. Now the maximum number of tabs on a dashboard is 6. So we'll see that. And then the maximum number of worklets is also 6, unless this has changed now. So on a single dashboard at the maximum, we can add 6 different worklets. What is a worklet? Worklet is nothing but a report. So we can have 6 tabs on a dashboard, right? And on each tab, we can have maximum number of six worklets or 6 reports. So now my dashboard is ready. What I need to do is now I need to go to my individual reports. Right? I'm taking this report. edit. So I'll have to share this report with someone, because if the report is not shared with anyone, then obviously it cannot be added to a dashboard. So I can either share it with all authorized users. So basically anyone who has access to this data source would then have access to the report, or I can specify some security groups, right? So for example, I'm saying HR admin, and uh, let's see any other admin, and I'm sharing it with HR partners. I'm also sharing it with global mobility admin and HR partners. I'm just sharing it with this, right? The next thing that I'll have to do is I'll have to go to output and enable this particular report as a worklet, right? So at the maximum, we can add 6 worklets. And what is a worklet? A worklet is nothing but a report. So I'm enabling it as a worklet. By default, it gets added to the home page, which is basically the home landing page, right? When we first log in. But then if I want, I can change that. I don't want it to be available on home landing page. I want it to be available on employee structure, right? And now I can go ahead and save this. Similarly, I'll also add it to the other. Okay, in this case, I'll just say share with all authorized users. I'll go to output. I'll specify the worklet options. I'm saying enable as a worklet. And then once again, I would add it. I can specify the number of rows that are displayed. So when the worklet loads initially, it will, even if, for example, this report, it has 5,000 rows, right? But then it will at the maximum show 10 rows, right? And then we have the option. Every time do we want to refresh the data? Every time we open the worklet, or only after every sign in, right? So what happens is every time in a single sign on, if I click on the dashboard, every time the dashboard gets reloaded and my data gets refreshed. If I select every sign in on a single sign in, no matter how many times I load, the same data gets loaded, right? So system doesn't refresh. So there's a big challenge with dashboards. When you are working with any reports on your dashboard, you have to ensure, or the report should be optimized, that they load within, I think it's a 20 seconds window. So if that doesn't happen, your report will simply time out on the dashboard, saying that it's taking too long to load. So it's not like you can go ahead and add any report on a dashboard, else it will simply time out. Okay, so I have created a new dashboard. I have edited a
But
couple
how do
of,
we check this processing time of a report? Like just manually we check that okay
so
within 20 seconds loading, or
so
is there any performance?
there is
Mhm.
a task which is called, so what you'll have to do is, there's this task, edit report performance log settings. It doesn't show in terms of seconds. I would have to enable it and then specify for which report I'm enabling. For example, I'm enabling it for, let's say, this report, right? Enabling it for this report as well as this report, right? Now, when I run this report, that's what I'm doing. Okay. Let's run this report. Okay. Now, if I go to view performance logs, right? Because we have enabled performance logs for these two reports. If you see, it has captured, right? So total execution time for this report that we just ran was 2368. I want to get into the details. I can click on it and it will show me the execution of individual fields. So this is where I can check. Okay, for example, okay, I can see, okay, a given calc field of mine is taking too long to execute, right? It will tell me
So
total.
where did you go to check the details? I didn't recognize.
So under view, the moment you enter view performance log, it will show you all the performance logs. You want to check specific performance log, you can click on view. Okay. So when you click on this button, it will show you the detailed breakup. It will show you the total execution time, how long the parameters took to run, how long each of these fields took to run, how many times they were executed, and so on and so forth. Right. So this is very handy. If you have any calculated fields which are taking too long to execute. So for example, here it shows me this calculated field of mine. It took only 65 million milliseconds to run. Right? So this is where you can see, okay, which field is taking the maximum amount of time to execute, and then you can optimize it. Right? It shows you a lot of other parameters. The total amount of time the initialization took, the total amount of time your prompts took, and so on and so forth. It gives you all those details, right? So when you come across any issues, this is the metrics that even Workday would ask for. If you tell them, okay, a certain report is not loading or not working,
So,
right?
sir, in this scenario, suppose a calculated field that we have used, and it is important to use that calculated field. So, what do we do when it is taking a longer time than expected and
Then
report
you'll
is not
have
loading?
to see how you
Do
can
you?
optimize it, right? You'll have to, okay,
Okay.
is there a different way I can build that calc field? Okay, instead of using a calc field, for example, you want to put a filter, right? So instead of using a calc field as a filter, can I use, for example, a sub filter? Because sub filters execute faster than a calc field if you directly use them on a filter. So then you'll have to see, okay, which of these options, maybe that option doesn't exist. You cannot use a sub filter. You have to use that calc field. Then you'll have to see, okay, how can I optimize a calc field? Is there any other business object from which I can get that data? So then it's a completely different beast altogether. But then you'll have to work at individual field level. That's how it goes.
Okay.
Okay, so now I have my dashboard ready. I have both my reports ready. I can now go to maintain dashboards. Right? I can search for my dashboard. Right? And I'll edit my dashboard. So currently it doesn't have any content. I want to add a content. So this is where I can add my tabs. Right? So for example, I'm saying this is tab 1. And within tab 1, I can add up to six reports. So when I go in here, it will show me all reports which are already enabled. So if I go to all, if you see, only these two reports are enabled, right, for this particular dashboard. So this way I can add up to 6 worklets on each tab, and I can add up to 6 tabs. So this is my tab 1. I can resize it. I can make it a required so that no one is able to remove it. 2, I can make my worklet a bit larger. So there are only 2 options available, 1x and 2x, right? I want to use a different title. I can do that. Okay, this is done. I can add both my reports here, but I'm adding it on a new tab. So I'm adding a new tab. I'll call it tab 2, and I'm adding my other report on tab 2. Let's add both the reports on this tab, right? Okay, if you see, the moment I select a report, it automatically populates those security groups this report is shared with, right? Now here I can say, okay, even though this report is shared with all these 3 security groups, I don't want it on this dashboard to be available with this group, so I can remove them, right? For the other report, if you remember, we said share with all. So when I go in there and select it, it will show me all the security groups, right? 424, because I've simply said shared this report with all security groups. Once again, if I want to make some modifications on the dashboard with respect to who can see it, I can go ahead and do the modifications here, right? And now my dashboard is done. Okay, I want to add this dashboard on my home landing page, right? Else what will happen is people will have to search for this dashboard, right? So employee, I think, what is my dashboard name? So when I search for this, if you see, people able to search it, and then I have my both my tabs. In tab 2 we added 2 reports, in tab 1 we added 1 report. Okay, our first report any which ways has error, right? So that's what it is showing, but my second report loads fine, right? And this is where, if you see, it's showing me 10 rows, and then the remaining rows it doesn't show. So on the report we had that option, show maximum 10 rows, right? If I want, I can extend that, and instead of 10, I think we can do up to 20 or so. So when we went here under worklet options, we had this maximum number of rows 10, right? So on the dashboard it's showing me 10 rows, but then if I want to see all the rows, I can click on view more, and then on the
And
second
if
tab,
you want to, and if you
mhm,
want to show only charts and not the table,
we can do that.
so
So that
you can
that
select the output as a chart, right?
correct. So then you'll simply have to select the output as chart here. So that is something you configure at the report level. Dashboard is simply showing you what the report is outputting. That's all.
And can you add all kinds of reports in the dashboard or
We can
only matrix and advanced?
No, we can add other reports as well. I can add trending. So ultimately, what is dashboard doing? Dashboard is simply calling multiple reports at the same time. So it doesn't matter whether it is matrix or advanced or any other trending or so on and so forth. You can add inbox reports as well if you want to, or maybe a composite report, right? And this is
And
my
if
tab 1.
we and if
Mhm.
we want to edit the existing dashboard which is already there in the system,
We can.
how do we check the reports which are already there in that dashboard?
So now I want to edit my dashboard. I'll again come to maintain dashboard task. I'll come in here, search for my dashboard, right? I can run and see what is happening, right? From here, I can delete this dashboard. I don't need it anymore, or I can edit it, right? And now I can say, okay, it shows me all the tabs. I don't want this. I want to rename it. I don't want something. I can simply delete it or add a new report or do whatever changes. So I don't need this tab anymore. I'm simply deleting it, right? So I can do all my modifications from maintain
So
dashboards.
configurable by user, that means that any user would be able to change it, right?
So
So
this
usually,
is no. So this is a different concept. This is with
okay.
respect to prompt set. So if your dashboard, so if your reports, let's say you're using 5 reports or 6 reports on your dashboard, right? And all those reports you want to pass, for example, the employee type as regular. Now, instead of doing at each report level, what you can do is you can configure something called prompt set. So the idea of a prompt set is let me show that real quick. Again, if there's no prompt set available, then we'll not configure that. But let me quickly show that. So what is a prompt set? A prompt set is nothing but a Just like on a report you have prompt, on a dashboard as well you have prompts. So the moment I uncheck this, if you see, it's asking me to select a prompt set. Prompt set is nothing but a prompt itself, a collection of prompts. So now I can select any of the available prompts. So for example, let's say I'm taking this one, country for tenant analysis. So here it shows me all the prompts, right? It has country or territory, right? Now what I can do is I can specify value here. So what it does is, now each report, obviously in our case it's not relevant because our reports do not make use of this prompt. But here, if you see, instead of saying this, I can say specify default value and specify a country. Now all my reports can then go ahead and make use of this prompt, right? I can make it a required prompt or optional prompt or whatever, right? So let's leave it optional and say done.
So it is the same prompt that we use in our
Report. Yes.
reports, right? And do we
Yes.
can we create this prompt set?
Yeah.
Suppose if there is
So
an
yeah.
requirement.
So there's a task called create prompt set. That's where we can create, but it has some limitations. You cannot use, for example, a calculated field on a prompt set, right? So it has those limitations. I'll quickly show that as well,
And if our report already has a prompt built, so do we all need to select that
right?
prompt set
If
here,
you see,
or will it work?
now I have that, right? Obviously, our report is not making. So here, the advantage is at the runtime, users can, okay, instead of India, I can select a different country or whatever, and now my reports will load for that country,
But
right?
if our report has already this prompt set before adding it to dashboard,
Right. So then
then
what I can do is, that's what I'm saying. What you can do is, so when you open these reports on the worklets, if you see, now a map prompts option open up. This option was not there earlier. For example, if I add a new tab, right? On this tab, we have not added a prompt set. If I go in here and add the same report, so I'm adding this very report. And if you go to the right, you see that you do not have that map prompts option, because on this tab, we are using a prompt set. So we are saying, okay, the prompt on the dashboard on this particular tab is country, right? But then you have to pass this value to the reports. So the moment you select a prompt set on the worklet, system shows you, okay, do you want to map this prompt to a specific prompt on the report? When you open it, it will show you all the prompts. So if you see, our report has these 4 prompts, right? Now you can say, okay, I want to map worker type to that specific value or that specific prompt. What Workday does is, if you see, use value from dashboard, right? And you can say, okay, now my dashboard has only country, right? And obviously country wouldn't map to worker type. Had there been a country prompt here, Workday would have automatically done that mapping for me. So it have said, okay, the country on the report will use the value of the country region field from the dashboard. So this is how you do your mapping, right? So you first created a dashboard, you added a prompt set on the dashboard, and now you're saying, okay, the field from this prompt on the dashboard will map into this view. So when you run this report, your reports will run with those values. All right.
in this case, our prompts, this map prompts, it should be same the prompt that we are giving in this prompt set,
Obviously,
right?
right? Else
Mhm.
it wouldn't.
Else it would not. Okay. Okay.
So you can go in here. I'm creating a new prompt set. I'm calling it Cloud Foundation. Again, I'm calling it EMP structure. And here I'm adding employee type because my report has employee type. Okay, so I want to search for employee type. As I mentioned here, in a prompt set, you cannot have any calculated fields. That's a restriction. Or this is usually tricky. Let's see what default values are coming. Okay, I know this is not relevant because it's not showing any default values. Let's see what is this one. Okay, I know this is the right one, right? Because we know employee type, these are the values that feed in. Okay, so I have created a new prompt set, and this is all. If you want, you can add more fields, right? You can add one more field. For example, you can also add contingent worker type. We can also add worker type. Okay,
So
now
can you
my
please
prompt
show me
set
once
is,
again? Sorry, I could not follow.
so
The
it's
create
simply
prompt.
create prompt set, and then you add your relevant field. That's it. Okay.
Okay. Hmm. So sometimes if in our report we have not created a prompt, we can come in dashboard also and we can do that. Like if we are using
But
that
then what
particular.
is the use? If your report is not going to use that prompt, if you simply
Hmm.
add it to the dashboard, it wouldn't work, right? Because ultimately
Okay.
that prompt has to feed into your report,
Okay. So it
right?
has to be always in that report also, right? Hmm.
Exactly. Else, how would
Hmm.
you map that prompt to your report,
Got it. Got it.
right?
Okay.
So for
Okay.
example, I'm also adding worker type. If I want, I can add more prompts here. Now I'll save it. I can go back to my dashboard. I'm saying cancel, right? So once you add a prompt set, you cannot change it. If I have to change it, I'll have to delete that tab. So I'll add it to the other one. So copy, search for this prompt set, right? Now if you see, it's automatically adding those prompts. If I want, I can specify the default values or anything. And now I can go to my worklets. It shows me that map prompts. And the moment I click on it, I'll have to say done and come back. Right. Now when I come to it, when I come to worklets and go in here, I'll have to click on map prompts, right? And if you see, it says use value from the dashboard, and my dashboard has worker type, right? So it's only showing worker type because Workday automatically knows this field should be mapped to worker type. And employee type, if you see, it's only showing employee type, right? So because those two prompts are available on my work report, Workday automatically maps them, right? And now I say done. So now when I run this report, obviously this would error out because this report has errors. But when we run this report, it will now run with those prompts. Okay. So this is how we can add prompts to our dashboard.
So if we are
And
not,
I just have,
yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I just have one more question. So when you go to create dashboard, I saw something like maximize and minimize in the output.
Here,
Create dashboard, not report. Uh,
let's not go to create. Let's say go back here. So this is our settings tab. Where was it?
I think we have to
um,
edit.
So this is the screen that opens when we create a dashboard, right? Dashboard name.
no, it was not here.
So when you create a
Uh,
dashboard, this is the screen that opens. You remember we specify domain
yeah,
and
yeah,
government dashboard.
but it was not here. It was somewhere else.
It was on
Anyway,
edit report, I think, on the worklet options. This one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So what are these two options?
So what happens is if you run this dashboard, what it's basically saying is, so many times, okay, now if I want, okay, this, let me add the other, I think both our tabs have the same one. Let's go back, edit our dashboard and also add second worklet. So you remember we had that view more option. So it is basically saying when you maximize it, because on your dashboard, you can only show a maximum of 10 rows. When you maximize your report options, do you want to display this very worklet or do you want to run a completely different report? So what we can say is, if you see here, we have that options. We have view more here, or we can click on down as well. So when we click here, if you see, it basically opens this very report. So basically what it says is, okay, if you go ahead and maximize it, and now when I run it, if you see, it will run this same report on the full page, like I'm running a normal report. So instead of running this report, it's saying when you maximize it, don't run this report. I want instead a different report to run. So I can come here and say, okay, instead of that, run, let's say, this report. And now when I run this,
So when do we have to use this? Like, what would be the use case?
many times what happens is, though I have not had to use this, but many times what happens is on a full view, you may want to use a different report. For example, on a matrix report, you're just looking at the chart. But then if someone wants to get into the details, you want to run an advanced report, a detailed report. So that could be one of those possible use cases, right? On the graph itself, you're just showing the summarized data on the dashboard, but then someone wants to view the full data, they can view that advanced report and look at the details, or maybe a table report, right? So now when I click on view more, so that is the idea. Once we execute it, we are basically saying when maximized, instead of running that report, basically run this report. Let's see one last time. Okay, I'll probably have to re-add it, but that's the whole idea. It's basically saying when the report is maximized, either run the same worklet when maximized or run a completely different. Let's try it for one last time. Dashboard is an issue. If you make any changes to the report after you have added the dashboard, then those changes do not reflect. So you'll have to basically go back to the dashboard, edit, come back, and then rerun the dashboard. Okay, I made changes to the other report, not the all workers company report. That's why. The cloud foundation, sorry. Let's go ahead and quickly do that one last time. So this is our report, right? And I'm editing this. And now I'm saying under output, worklet options, when this is maximized, I want to run a different report, which is Cloud Foundation headcount. Okay, now I can go back to my dashboard. Worklets. Say done. Let's go back to our okay. Now I'll click on view more. All right, I'll have to check, but this is when it should actually open the other report, because now we are actually maximizing this particular worklet. All right, any other questions with the worklets or with the dashboards? There's just one more thing. I want to add this dashboard on the home landing page. So when I say home landing page, basically here, right? You see, they don't have an option to configure this. That is because it is a required, so they cannot delete it, right? But anything which is not required, it's an optional. If they don't want, they can go ahead and delete it, right? Or if they want, they can add anything else as well, which is obviously optional. But all required worklets, if I go, they are required. So the end user doesn't have the option to delete it or modify them or make any changes to them, right?